Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. Started the pre-show a little early today. I just wanted to make sure everything's working. For those of you who have been participating for a while, you know that last month's show went great. Last month's live chat was fine, but the two before that were a little weird. So the services that I use have indicated that there have been some updates, so I wanted to just make sure all that stuff works. So here I am, just a little bit early. And we can kind of have some casual chats. You know, it's always a good opportunity for us to maybe talk about things that are real estate adjacent here in our local South Valley markets. For those of you who are new to the live chat, this is something we do one Saturday every month on the third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. Typically is when it officially starts. And we talk about the local numbers, what's going on, any big news items, any local news items that have come up that are worth talking about, that kind of thing. We hit all the big market data. We start with the county, since obviously that's going to be the biggest numbers. So the larger the sample size, the more reliable the numbers, right? And then we drill right down to Gilroy, and we do it by the county of Santa Clara, and then we do San Jose, then we do Morgan Hill, then we do Gilroy. And that's just sort of a way of drilling down to smaller communities. If any of you would like to include any other smaller sub areas of Silicon Valley or Santa Clara County, I'd be happy to entertain that or have a private conversation or even a conversation here with you about it. It's a little bit tough for me to on the fly wrangle up numbers for a city, but not impossible to at least get some quick views, maybe what Zillow's putting out or something like that. So feel free to make those suggestions. Now, for those of you who are watching the show on, let's see here. I should be able to see everybody's comments on let's see, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I will be able to see your comments. For LinkedIn, it's read only, which is fine, which means I can read your comments and questions, and I'll just respond to them verbally in the stream, right? So you won't see any comments by me that I type in. The quote-unquote home of the show is Facebook, so if ever there's a technical glitch or a problem, at the very least I have a plan C where I will at least be able to stream on Facebook. So you might want to just keep that in mind as we go forward. What else? We could talk. I don't even know if we. I don't know if I want to out myself as like the complete geek. But one of the things that has happened since the last time we chatted was I acquired a model of the Enterprise from Star Trek that's like gigantic, and it's metal and it weighs a ton. You'll see it behind me. It's above my head. In fact, I don't know, I'll point to it here. I'll go and switch over to me, and you can see it's right there. It's gigantic, and it's battery powered, and it's amazing. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit how much I like it. But now as a kid, I used to watch Star Trek as in reruns in the 70s, late 70s. And I've always been more of a Spock, Scotty guy, right? I was never Captain Kirk's just fine, but the guys who make stuff happen, that's Scotty and Spock, right? So those were always my guys. And maybe Scotty a little bit because my family history is Scottish, so to the point where I actually have inherited the family bagpipes, and my father used to be in the Santa Clara County Scottish bagpipe band and marched and all that kind of stuff. So a little family heritage, I guess, linked to that. Oh, enjoying coffee as we chat this morning. I hope you are all as well. I try different, so probably every month I'm trying different beans, and I have stumbled on some pretty amazing beans. If any of you are interested, this month's beans are the Stumptown Coffee Roasters Holler Mountain Creamy and Caramel. It says flavor notes of citrus, zest, caramel, and hazelnut. And I realize that kind of puts me into the pigeonhole of coffee snob. I'm not. I don't think I am, because I don't actually like coffee that much. I do a mocha thing, right? I do a keto mocha, which is interesting to try and accomplish. But So I use monk fruit to sweeten it up a little bit, and I use cacao instead of cocoa, so it's got no sweeteners in it. It's just straight cacao, which, for those of you who have tried cacao, does not taste exactly like chocolate. So I do that, and I put a little vanilla in there for a little extra flavor, but that's kind of my role. My son, however, does straight drink. He'll like espresso these babies out and drink them straight, and he says this is a really good batch. So he's not a guy who is prone to much of an emotional response to anything. So the fact that he even bothered to comment on that, I thought was interesting. So it looks like we are good. Let's see. I'm just checking real quick here. Checking on YouTube. Let's see here.
Yeah, I'm just checking real quick.
Yep, there we go. We are up on YouTube. Going to check on Twitter. I can already see that we're doing well on Facebook in terms of, well, that says the page doesn't exist. And that's a lie. Let's see. Let me go. It's probably going to be on my profile page. And there we are. No, that's the promotion. No, there we go. There's the live stream right there.
That's probably going to be on the profile page.
Okay, excellent. So it's all there. It's all running. Good news. Everything seems to be operating as expected. Let's see. It doesn't give me an option to view it on LinkedIn. I'll have to go there manually. But you know what? I'm going to let that one slide. So we've got about 12 minutes till the actual show starts. I have got comments in front of me, Facebook comments and YouTube and LinkedIn. Let's see. Facebook is separate from LinkedIn and YouTube. So I apologize if I see one and not the other. It may take me a few minutes to notice comments as they come up. I do have them set here so that they are as noticeable as possible. But just so that you're aware that it's kind of off to one side. So as those comments come in, I will be happy to address them, whether it's a question or a comment or whatever else. I'll be happy to make it part of the show. But we do have some interesting stuff. And of course, I think the biggest news item that obviously would affect everybody is the court case, where the way that commissions are allocated has sort of been argued. And there was, I think it came to the tune of a $1.7 or $1.8 billion judgment. We can talk about that if you want to. I actually did a podcast on it a couple of weeks back. And I also apologize to my podcast listeners. It has been a couple of weeks since I've done a podcast. And that's been primarily because I've had some sort of, I don't know if it's a cold / flu / allergy thing, but my voice has been really, today's actually the first day my voice has felt normal. I was expecting to have a whole bunch of throat lozenges and other things here at the ready for us to do the live show today. But so far, so good. I do have some sitting here just in case, but hopefully everything will be fine. We're creeping up on 10 minutes away from the start time. And as I said, any questions, comments, topics you'd like to cover today, feel free to share those with me now. I am, one of my main goals for this is for questions to get asked that where the answer gets shared with everyone while we're here. I do appreciate those of you who reach out to me outside of the live stream. Of course, I'm always happy to help. But then that only benefits you, right? And sometimes I'll bring those up in a podcast or in a future stream. But the goal is always to spread the knowledge as widely as possible. So don't feel like your question's a dumb one, right? There's no such thing as a dumb question. Really, it tends to be just dumb answers that are the problem. So feel free to ask any questions you might have relating to anything on the real estate world here in Silicon Valley, or even nationally. If you're seeing trends somewhere that you think are important, we can always chat about those. Getting another caffeine hit there before the show starts. Other amazing, not real estate related things. SpaceX managed to do their launch today. I watched that live. I got up really early this morning. I'm not sure why. I wasn't making a special effort to go and watch the launch, but the launch happened and it was great. And it's amazing, right? It's the technology that's involved. It's the biggest, heaviest rocket ever. It's really kind of spectacular. So I hope all of you got a chance to at least see that in a video clip. I'm sure it'll be all over the news feeds. It was all over Twitter/X earlier today. So feel free to check that out. That kind of stuff is amazing. I love that stuff. Not sure what kind of an effect that might have on local real estate. Not a lot. But SpaceX is interesting, right? Because one of the things that got me turned on to Boxable, and for those of you who are new to the stream or to my podcast, Boxable is a company that makes auxiliary dwelling units, right? These are small, livable buildings that have a kitchen and a bathroom and a place to sleep. They're a living unit. And they are transportable by simply a trailer truck, right? They're not too wide. That doesn't require any special handling in terms of shipping. It can go down the road just like any cargo container. And literally, once you have the foundation, electrical, water, and sewer all kind of there on the site, ready to receive the thing, it takes less than a day to drop it off, hook it up, and have it ready to live in. And it's ready to go. It's kind of amazing. It opens up like origami when they unpack it. And they're like Legos for houses. So meaning the company that's doing this, Boxable, and there's other companies that do other versions, you can combine them so that instead of just having this 600 square foot or whatever it is living unit, you can combine them and have them be, each module could be a different thing. One could be your living room, one could be your kitchen, one could be your master bedroom, right? So there's this flexibility that's being built into it that I think is fantastic. I love seeing things that make housing easier, and there's so much technology and creativity in these. And because of the way they're built, they're actually better insulated and more durable than stick-built homes. So kind of amazing. There are other providers of similar types of housing, and I encourage folks to check those out. The reason I bring it up is Elon Musk has one at the spaceport in Texas where he launches his spaceships, and supposedly he stays in one of those when he's at the site, which I think is kind of cool. I mean, okay, so that kind of, I guess that's a nice segue. I guess that's sort of a SpaceX to real estate segue that I could theoretically make. Hopefully it worked. Again, we'll be starting officially at 10 a.m. and the first thing we do usually is just run the numbers, right? We start with, and the numbers I like to focus on are the county numbers. So we start with kind of the county numbers, and that's because it's the biggest sample size and you can come to better conclusions. The bigger sample size you have, the more reliable the data, right? And then we'll also do a graphical comparison of that to the other communities, the sub-communities of Santa Clara County. As I said, San Jose, Morgan Hill and Gilroy kind of fit into that, and we chart them right next to each other so you can see very easy how they relate to one another. And I think it's a good way to see the market and get a broader feeling. We've also got some interesting news. I think I have more potential news items this time than I've had in a very long time. So some of them will probably be quick, just things to kind of spark you thinking, or maybe inspire you to look into something, or get more answers about something, or ask a question here on the show. And again, feel free to do that through the chat feature or the commenting feature on the videos. And you can do that in Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I will be able to see those as you go through. So feel free to give those a try. We're about 5 minutes away from starting. So if you don't have your coffee, go grab it right now so you're ready and you're able to enjoy it as we talk about real estate here in the South County area. I'm going to have another hit here. I can see we've had a couple of people arrive on a different platform. Welcome to the pre-show. We started the pre-show a little earlier. We started at about 9:20 instead of 9:40 instead of 9:45. Just sort of casually talking about stuff, some that has nothing to do with real estate. Mentioned the launch of SpaceX this morning, which went off without a hitch. Just absolutely beautiful, and that stuff is just amazing, and I love tracking that stuff. But also discussed the coffee of the day. The coffee for today is Stumptown Coffee Roasters Holler Mountain creamy and caramel beans, which we then grind here in the house and turn them into coffee. My son says they're great. I can't tell you if the beans themselves, I like the flavor I'm getting off of what I have here, but as some of you may know, I'm a mocha guy. I've never really been a super duper coffee guy. For me, it's really a caffeine delivery system. And I do a lot of weird keto stuff. So I do a lot of weird keto stuff. I don't use real chocolate. I use cacao and monk fruit to sweeten it, and throw in a little vanilla and a little cinnamon to, get a good taste off the stuff. But I can definitely taste the difference when it's a big difference between one bean and the other when you're making a mocha, and I can tell the difference. This is one of my favorites, and typically I will order a different bag every month from a different provider just to kind of get a feeling for what's out there. I like these guys. These will be on my list, my short list of reorders. Because it's good. It's very much, I can definitely get the hint of hazelnut. Not so much the citrus. It says it's got a citrus thing going on, but I'm not really picking up the citrus. Maybe that gets killed by the other things I do to it, but I'm not really feeling it. All right, as we move along here, we're just a couple of minutes away from getting started. Let me get a few screens squared away here so we're ready to go with the rest of the shenanigans for this morning. As I mentioned, we're going to start off with the big numbers, right? That's what we do every time. We hit those big numbers. And then after that, we kind of hit the news items that I've been alluding to. I've got a whole long list of them this time around. I think one of the big news items is particularly if you're a real estate agent. If you're a real estate agent, the whole commissions thing is obviously one of the big topics that's happened since the last time we did Coffee and Real Estate. So that may come up. I'll definitely cover it a little bit. If you would really like what I think is a good discussion of it, I would suggest checking out my last podcast. You can find that at therebelbroker.com, which is the website. But of course, if you have Apple, if you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Audible, YouTube, any of those, you can, well, that's bizarre. Something strange is going on with maybe it's because of the size. Yeah, I had the size real narrow and it made my big ugly mug too big. Questioning the $1.8 billion realtor conspiracy verdict. That was on November 3rd, so that was the last show. And again, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know that it's usually weekly. Last couple of weeks I've been not feeling so hot and the voice hasn't been so good, so I haven't done a show. I do have a show on the queue, ready to go. So that'll be coming out here within the next few days, probably Monday or Tuesday, where it's really going to be more of a conversational show for us. But we're about ready to get started here. We're just less than a minute away from the 10 a.m. mark. So as I said, we're going to hit those big numbers and get through those. We'll do a quick just an intro to the folks who aren't tuning in till right at 10. But again, feel free to ask any questions, any comments, ideas, concerns, things that are worrying you, things about real estate that annoy you or make you extremely happy. It's almost never that one. It's almost never things about real estate that make you extremely happy. It's almost always the things that annoy you. Feel free to put that comment into Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, and I will be able to see it. If there is a commenting ability in any other format, I can't see those. So unfortunately, I won't be able to respond. But any questions I do see, I will make an effort to give you an answer or point you in the right direction. And welcome to it, folks. We have just crossed over to 10 a.m., the beginning of this month's Coffee and Real Estate. I thank you all for tuning in. I had more folks than usual on the pre-show, which is usually the part of the show where we don't talk much about real estate. It's an opportunity to make sure the stream is working, but it's also an opportunity to chat about other things. Hello, I hope you've all had a wonderful morning. I started super early. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the rain that was keeping me up, but it's been raining like crazy here, and I headed out and drove by some new listings this morning. Drove by a couple of listings that are over $3 million in Morgan Hill and another area where it was over $3 million. So it just blows me away. When I think about how much you're going to pay in property taxes, which comes to about $2,500 a month on a home like that, it's absolutely crazy. And are there homes that are absolutely worth that? For sure. These ones, I didn't feel like those were ones that should be going for over $3 million, but maybe that's just me. As I have done, I hope you have all brought your favorite coffee. This is going to be the last time I do any promo for these guys, but the coffee beans today are, what are they? I saved them so I could tell you, because every once in a while someone asks. Stumptown Coffee Roasters Holler Mountain are the coffee beans for today. So there you go. If you'd like to partake, I get it from Amazon. I go with a different bag almost every time, but feel free to check that out. And we'll go ahead and jump in. Let's go ahead and take a look at the big numbers for October of 2023. Let's see here. All right, so first we're going to start with total homes on the market. So this is the total marketplace, right? If you are a buyer, this represents your choices. How much did you have to choose from out there in the marketplace? And look at that. My ugly mug is blocking some stuff. So let's just go without my ugly mug. For sellers, think of this as your competition number. How many homes were you competing against out there in the marketplace in these various markets? And what we do is we compare Santa Clara County, San Jose, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. And I start with Santa Clara County because the sample size is big, right? And the bigger the sample size, the better conclusions you can come to based on what's going on. So we have a 24% decline from the same time last year in the county overall. Last year, we had 1,705 homes in the marketplace. This year, same month, 1,291 homes. San Jose saw a 28% decline with 825 homes last year, 592 this year. Morgan Hill, 80 last year, 55 this year. That's a total decline of 31%. And in Gilroy, we saw a 36% drop, 106 homes last year, 68 homes this year. Next, let's talk about new listings. These are homes that were added to the market in October. So these are homeowners who decided, I want to sell my house, and they signed a listing agreement and it got entered into the MLS by a real estate agent. In the county in general, this number is up 15%, which is kind of amazing, right? Remember, think about where we are. We're in October. Typically, we start to see this number start to drop in October, at least, and we'll see what happened month over month, right? We do this part, which is just a year over year comparison. And then the charts that we get to after this show us just looking over our shoulder at past months. And we'll see if we can't tease out of that any crystal ball gazing, anything we might be able to interpret as a indicator of what's going to happen in the upcoming future months. So again, Santa Clara County saw a 15% increase in the number of homes that were put onto the market by their owners hoping to get it sold. San Jose saw an 18% increase, 572 this year, 486 last year. Morgan Hill saw a 3% decline from the same time last year, but these numbers are so close that I'd call it a wash, right? Remember, smaller sample size, individual homes can have a much bigger effect on the numbers you pull out. So don't immediately think to yourself, oh my gosh, what's going on in Morgan Hill with 3% fewer listings? It's one house, right? So I call that a wash. If we're thinking margin of error, the margin of error as we go down this is going to be wider and wider as we have a smaller sample size. Gilroy, same deal, down 2%, 51 last year, 50 this year. Nothing to get horribly excited about. One thing that's interesting to note is that, let's see, we're going to, as we compare this, right? So we're going to compare this to homes sold. And we'll see what the numerical effect is on the market overall, right? And you'll understand what that means in a second, I promise. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments section, wherever you are, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to try to address those questions here. All right, so this is the total number of homes sold. These are the homes that closed escrow in the month. And to calibrate you, an escrow is typically 30 to 45 days. I typically see them going 45 days or more. So just so you can understand when a contract was accepted on these houses, right? It wasn't likely last month. There's a good chance it was the month before that these were accepted. So and you almost never see a home get taken off the market as in contract and selling in the same month. It almost never happens unless it's an all cash purchase. All right, so what we are seeing is a 2% decrease in the total number of homes sold. 940 in Santa Clara County last year. This year, 922. San Jose saw a 15% decrease. Very interesting to note this because San Jose and Santa Clara County, because of the sample size, which tends to be more reliable, as I said, tend to be hand in hand. These numbers tend to be very close. San Jose is the single largest market within Santa Clara County. So to see such a discrepancy between the two is very interesting. And if you're interested in numbers and data, and I kind of am, it makes you want to look into that a little bit more. to try to figure out why. It's San Jose again down 15%, 530 last year, 452 this year. Morgan Hill was up 10%, 42 homes last year, 46 homes this year. And Gilroy's up 29%, 28 last year, 36 this year. And Gilroy continues to be sort of the standout community in terms of activity in the marketplace. And the reason for that is, as I've said, I think we've been saying the same thing now for the last 4 months as it relates to Gilroy. People are simply finding the best bang for the buck in Gilroy. Whether you're talking about taking into account all the costs, including your interest rates and everything else you're going to pay for a loan, without having to reduce your expectations for your house, right? That 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in San Jose is going to cost a lot less in Gilroy than in San Jose. So if you are in a position where you got to have that 3-bedroom, 2-bath home and you can't afford to adjust numbers based on what interest rates are doing, getting that lower price is preferable. So people are willing to go ahead and tack on that 30-minute commute to get down to Gilroy, right? So that's one reason why that's happening. In terms of what it versus listed, now, the reason why I like to track this is because it tells you whether or not we are adding or subtracting homes from the market when we compare homes sold to homes listed. So we listed in Santa Clara County 1,132 homes, right? We covered that in the last slide, but we sold 922. So we added 210 homes to the market, right? That's the net effect. Homes in San Jose, we added 120 to the marketplace. We listed 572, but we listed 452. This is one of the few communities where this changes. Morgan Hill, we sold more homes than we listed. We listed 38, we sold 46. So that is a thing that happens in Morgan Hill. And one of the things that has kept Morgan Hill so high and expectations so high is this low inventory where folks are tending, if someone really wants to live in Morgan Hill, it's costing them more because there is simply no inventory out there for them. It just tends to be super low. In Gilroy, that number is 36, total number of homes sold versus 50 homes listed. So that's a total net of 14 homes added to the marketplace. So in the communities that we check, Morgan Hill's the only place that sold more homes than got listed, right? An interesting thing to note, particularly if you're a buyer out there looking and trying to find markets you like that aren't as competitive or aren't seeing as much activity. Morgan Hill obviously isn't one of those places. You're going to pay a little bit more of a premium just because things are so nuts in terms of what the inventory is doing in Morgan Hill. Love Morgan Hill. It's one of my favorite cities. It's where I choose to live. But man, I tell you, it's tough being a buyer in this particular market. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at months of inventory. This is an interesting number because it tells us how balanced the market is in a lot of different ways. Right now, nationally, months of inventory for a balanced market where neither sellers nor buyers have the advantage is considered to be about 5.5 months. We are nowhere near that. So in Santa Clara County, it's down 22% from the same time last year. We have 1.4 months, meaning if you froze the inventory this month and you froze the number of homes sold this month, it would only take 1.4 months to sell off the entire inventory. That's what months of inventory equals. And that's what we're seeing here with this number in Santa Clara County. So under 2 months, far under 2 months. And that's true across the board. San Jose down 19% from the same time last year. We have 1.3 months of inventory this year, 1.6 last year. Morgan Hill had 1.9 last year, and we've got 1.2 this year for a 37% decline. And Gilroy, and it's while it is the highest number, look at the change. 3.8 months last year at this time for a 50% decrease to 1.9. And that is a great indicator of how things have changed in the Gilroy marketplace just when we do this year-to-year comparison, right? I don't have any other magic numbers relating to that one, so we can move on to pending homes. Now, this is an opportunity for us to try to look into the crystal ball just based on this number of what's going to happen next month, because these are the numbers of how many homes in the month of October went pending or contingent. And that means they accepted an offer. So that's what in the translation from real estate speak to normal people speak is a buyer made an offer on a house and the seller accepted it. That's what this number represents. Now, in the county overall, we saw a 4% increase. We can see that we had 850 this year and 817 last year. San Jose, really a wash, 0% change. 431 last year, 429 this year. Morgan Hill saw a 38% increase. 10 more homes went pending in the month of October this year than last year for a 38% increase. Gilroy saw a 6% increase, 31 homes last year, 33 homes this year. And those numbers are so close, again, because of sample size, that's kind of a wash. But this tells us to expect for November, it would be logical to expect these kinds of numbers in terms of what's going to see as closed escrows. And when we look at month over month, we'll see what the trend is. Is this a normal trend compared to past years or not? So we'll get an opportunity to look into that a little bit more closely. Okay, now we move on from pending or contingent to original list price, what the average original list price was. This is a number nobody else covers. I do not know why. I think it's a great number to get into the psychology of sellers because the original list price represents what the price was when it first went onto the multiple listing service. So in other words, the homeowners were sitting in their living room. A real estate agent came in and said, let's list your house. How much do we want to list it for? And they all agreed. And then that number is the very first number that was entered into the multiple listing service to list the home for sale. And I had to do some double checking here because you're looking at this and you're seeing a crazy number for Morgan Hill. We can talk about that in a minute because I did kind of figure that out. So Santa Clara County, last year, $1,798,133 versus this year's $1,812,204, which is a 0.8% increase. Now remember, this is expectations. When sellers walked into the marketplace, waving around a picture of their house saying who wants to buy it, this is the number they expected people to pay when they listed the home for sale. Santa Clara County overall, I think, is pretty well calibrated. We're not seeing a huge amount of growth. We'll see what the actual sales numbers were in October, and we'll compare to what expectations are. But that's pretty well calibrated. Overall in the county, things are looking pretty good. San Jose, 2.5% higher than the same time last year. Last year it was $1,334,000. This year, $1,368,000. Morgan Hill, here we go. $1,339,000 versus $1,749,000 this year for a 30% increase. And this is, again, a phenomenon of the small sample size where a handful of homes can really skew things. You know those $3 million homes I was talking about? This is an example of that, where in the month of October, we saw several homes listed over $3 million. And I believe that's in Borrello Ranch. So whenever you see a bunch of listings, what's interesting is 3 homes have come up in Borrello Ranch. Not normal for that many homes in Borrello Ranch to be listed. It's a very new development, but some folks in there are looking to sell, and those homes are listing for over $3 million. And even with just 3 or 4 of those homes in there, the average original list price number tends to get bloated. So if we compensate for that a little bit, this number actually drops down to being closer to about 4 or 5% from last year, just to sort of calibrate you. And of course, that's the number you want, right? You want to figure out what are the more base level expectations on the part of sellers. And aside from these outlying communities, which tend to have much higher asking prices, this number, while it's accurate given the available data, when you give it the context of the communities that these homes are in and what we're expecting as people trying to assess the market, it makes a little bit more sense. In fact, if you were someone talking to me about, I'm interested in this area of Morgan Hill, we could generate a more accurate number here to try to set what our expectations are. And then finally in Gilroy, the number's down 14.3%. And that's it. We talked about it earlier. Why is Gilroy so attractive? 14.3%. So not sales prices, but expectations. What sellers are calibrated to, which is stunning to me, is 14.3% less than it was a year ago. Last year, it was $1,332,000. This year, $1,141,000. So that is a big motivator for buyers, right? If you're someone who's trying to find that 3-bedroom, 2-bath home and not spend $2.5 million for it, obviously, you're going to be tempted by what Gilroy has to offer. Let's see. It says here I have a comment, but I don't see it, so I don't know where it went. I don't see it in any of the 3. So if you've made a comment and I haven't responded, I apologize. I'm not seeing it showing up. Maybe try it again, and we'll see if it shows up. Okay, so that's the hits for average original list price. Let's go ahead and jump in and look at average sales prices, because this is where things get juicy, right? These are some good numbers to also compare to average original list price. And when we talk about sales price, This is what it sold for at the end. When escrow finally closed and checks got sent, like the seller got his check, the buyer got their brand new mortgage that they're going to have to start paying. That's what this represents. So in Santa Clara County, we saw an 11.7% increase in average sales price. Last year was $1,685,000. This year, $1,836,000, an 11.7% increase. Now let's just kind of get a grasp on that for a second. Let's see here. And you know what? I didn't update those percentages below. So that 11.7 is wrong. I apologize. That's actually 8.9% increase. But let's look at it here for a second. What does that represent as compared to expectations from sellers, right? Sellers had an expectation in Santa Clara County, on average, 1.7 million. And what they got was I'm looking in the wrong column. Their expectation this year was 1.8 million, 1.812, and what they got was 1.836 on average for sales price. So they got more than their expectation was, to the tune of $24,000 in Santa Clara County in general, $24,432. If we look at San Jose, which again, apologies, it's not 13.2%, it's 9.2%. Last year it was 1,337,691. This year, 1,461,181, which was the sales price. And if we compare that to the expectation of 1,368,000, we see that 1,461,000 is greater than the expectation of sellers for a $92,478 difference. So they made $92,000 and a half more dollars than they expected. So this is a way to sort of weight what reality was versus what expectations were in those areas. So now, and the reason why I'm spending so much time on this is we do see a pivot, right? We see a difference as we move into the other communities. Now, looking at Morgan Hill, we can see that average sales price was $1,587,295. That is not down as this number. These are last month's numbers. I apologize for not updating that. That's a 23.2% increase from the previous year, but even with that number, if we look at what expectations were 1,749,000, and even after we correct for it, that's still not higher than 1.587, which is $162,000 less than expectations. Sorry for the pause here. There we go. Got another comment, but I'm not seeing it, so I apologize. Maybe it's the same person making a comment. But anyway, so that's where we are in terms of expectations versus deliverance, right? Losing money versus expectations in Morgan Hill. Gilroy's in the same boat. Last year, Gilroy saw $1,125,000 in terms of average sales price. This year, $1,099,000. Again, ignore that number below, that percentage below. That should be down 2.3% for a net loss of $42,000 compared to expectations. So in the county and in San Jose, getting above expectations. Sellers are getting more than what they're listing their homes for. In Morgan Hill and Gilroy, they're tending to get less than what their homes are listed for. That is huge data to know. If you're a buyer, if you're a real estate agent negotiating on behalf of a buyer, that's important data to know. Now, of course, as it gets mentioned in a lot of different venues, micro markets are super important. Super important in Morgan Hill. There are lots of different areas of Morgan Hill that are very different. As I mentioned, the Borello Estates, where homes on average are $3 million, not representative of Morgan Hill in general, right? But definitely something to keep in mind, that we're seeing these kinds of challenges in the Morgan Hill and Gilroy markets where sellers are having to take below expectations. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look now at percent over or under asking price. Now, this is an opportunity. We were focusing on seller psychology before with original list price. Now we're focusing on buyer psychology, because this number represents how much above or below asking price did buyers offer on a house based on the listing price they are faced with. So not the original list price. These numbers are based on what was the list price at the time the offer was made. So I'm a buyer and I see home 123 Main Street listed for $1 million and I offer $800,000, right? Well, that's obviously below asking price. This is a representation of where those offers were coming in. So let's take a look at it. Now, Santa Clara County, and these numbers are all correct in the bottom. Santa Clara County was up 4.2%. Last year, it was 99.9% of list price. So obviously just under list price. This year, it's 104.1. So 4.1% above asking price. San Jose, very similar numbers, a 4.4% boost from last year. 99.8 last year, 104.2 this year. So again, 4.2% above asking price. So what does that equal, right? It's the number represents realities. Those realities are multiple offers. You're going to tend to not see you're not going to tend to see percentages like this over asking price unless in a big, large scale way, buyers are offering over asking price for these properties, right? So this gives us some education on what the market is out there and what buyers are facing in terms of being into multiple offer scenarios. Now, does that mean every scenario is a multiple offer scenario? No, doesn't. But it means that on average, it is. And these numbers are super reliable simply because of the sample size, right? You're getting thousands of homes with Santa Clara County numbers. So these are good indicators of where you want to see your mindset at. So if you're a buyer, you want to be aware of these numbers. If you're a buyer's agent, you want to be calibrating your clients to this potential reality that they might be facing. In Morgan Hill, we actually saw a 0.2% decrease. It went from 98.7% last year to 98.5% this year. So below asking price, which indicates on average not seeing multiple offers, right? We are seeing about 1.5% below asking price. In Gilroy, check out this delta, right? With all the other numbers we looked at, last year was 98.7. This year it's 102.3 for a 3.6% boost from last year, meaning on average in Gilroy, homes are selling for 2.3% over asking price. Now, kind of blend that with what we've already talked about with Gilroy, and you can see that clearly more attention has been drawn to Gilroy in terms of pricing. We've seen pricing reductions. We've seen this being a more effective region for potential buyers. And as they're being drawn there, the competition for what is available goes up, which ends up equaling this kind of stuff, multiple offers, where we see 2.3% above asking price. Again, not across the board. There are definitely, and Gilroy is another one of those very varied markets where everything from the northwest end of town, where Christopher High School is, which is a super popular area, to the sort of estates area of Gilroy, which is northeast Gilroy, where typically your average piece of land is at least an acre and more on average 5 acres, where it tends to be estates, quote unquote, than other things. So Gilroy's got a lot of variety in there as well. All right. Let's take a look at our next chunk of data, which I think is days on market. And that is exactly what it is. Let me make sure my numbers are good. Yes, the percentages put in are all correct. Santa Clara County saw a 32% drop in the total number of days on market, 28 last year, 19 this year. And keep in mind, when you're in the teens like this, particularly when a market is crazy, and particularly when you're seeing numbers that show multiple offers, which is anything over 100% in terms of what we just talked about, right? Are we getting over asking price? When you're seeing 19 days, that's probably not the real number, meaning it's been artificially affected. And what do I mean by that? When you have a market, and it depends on where your home is listed, but if you have a market where things are nuts, and even in some markets where it's not nuts, agents are going to put in there, we're not going to accept any offers until such and such a date. And that date is typically 10 to 15 days out, right? Because an agent will want to have, say, 2 open houses potentially on a house to make sure as many people see it as possible, because the more eyeballs you get on a property over time, the higher the probability you're going to get a multiple offer scenario. And in a market where things are crazy, a lot of these homes in these markets where things were selling for 4.2% over asking price, these homes would have sold in a day. If they just took that first offer, they would have been sold in the first day, right? So it gets a little bit artificially pushed. And the reason why I'm going into a little bit more detail on this is we see a different scenario in Morgan Hill. Now, first, let's talk about San Jose, which is down 10 days, 27 days last year, 17 days this year for a 37% decrease. Morgan Hill, up 22%. Only city where that's happened. This is the only city where days on market has gone up from 27 days to 33 days. Another indicator that things are slowing here. Things aren't moving as quickly in Morgan Hill as they are in other communities. And a lot of that, I think, is people are shocked by some of the prices that they're seeing in Morgan Hill. And it pushes people further south, and we see that reflected in the numbers in Gilroy, which on average is beating the county for days on market at 17 days, 35 days last year, 17 days this year, for a 51% drop from the same time last year. So, and the distinctive thing about Gilroy is the affordability of what you can get there. And I think that's what's setting it apart, and that's what explains some of these other numbers, whether we're talking about being 2.3% over asking price in general. And again, the numbers still indicate that deals are being had, right? Because even when we compare it to the original list price in Gilroy, we are seeing the average sales price being below that to the tune of almost $42,000, right? So Gilroy still represents a very exciting opportunity for an awful lot of people who are skipping over Morgan Hill because of some of the prices I think they're faced with and moving right onto these prices that are a little bit more flexible for them. Okay, next, let's talk about price reductions. Now, this is a number I started tracking price reductions are at the very end. This is where we look back. This is gaze into the crystal ball time, right? Where we try to look at numbers, look at how we were in the same period of time over and see where the trend has been from last year to this year, right? So this is what we're looking at. Total active listings, and we can see that in October of 2023, we are about the same as we were in September, but we're up from August, right? The amount of inventory has gone up. The trend has been up. If we look at October, check out the difference between September and October of last year. Between September and October of last year, we had a big old drop in overall inventory. And after October, we had another big drop. And then from October to November, another big drop. And December, things kind of stopped and things kind of recover in January. That's pretty normal. The fact that we're seeing overall inventory being stable right now, because there's two influences, right? Typically, we tend to see fewer people listing homes at this time of year, but we saw an increase compared to the same time last year in terms of new listings because people don't want to deal with selling their home during the holidays, right? Whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then they will tend to jump back onto the market in January. So what happens? What do we assume when that doesn't happen, right? What are things we can extract from that reality that inform us? Well, it tells us a couple of things. One, if you're listing your home now, you need to get your home sold. There's a greater need on your part, right? If you're listing your home and you leave it on the market for November and December, that's a need on average, right? It tends to indicate you're more motivated. So as you see homes staying on the market November, December, you can make a good bet that those folks are more motivated than other folks. Because again, on average, homes tend to be pulled off the market for those months. Anything else we can pull out? If we look back to the same time in 2021, like September, October, November, look, a decline all the way until we hit December when it starts to go up in January. That is normally what we see, and that we're not seeing it makes me want to look more closely at these things as it comes out because it's not quote unquote normal. It's not typical for the season. So we'll see where things go from here. And it's going to be interesting when we see what pending numbers are looking like on this particular graph. Now, this is new listings, and we can see we had a big drop from September to October. We kind of peaked in May. Very normal. That's a very normal number. Then we see a bit of a drop in June and then in July, but then see an uptick in August. If we look at September, October last year, we can see there was a drop from September to October last year. Very normal. September to October the year before that, another drop, very normal. Not as dramatic a drop this time around, but still a drop, so the trend holds. If we take a look at homes sold, we can see we had an uptick in homes sold between September and October. If we look at September and October of last year, you can see there was a drop, right? Activity went down dramatically between September and October. If we go back the year before that, also a drop, not as dramatic, but a drop. And I'll try to point these out here with my mouse. So you can see this is 2021 between September and October, little bit of a decrease. September and October here, big decrease, right? And then September and October here, up. Again, another trend that bucks past trends or past things that have sort of defined this particular market. So more people came out and bought than in previous years in the month of September, October. And this, because this is homes sold, we can assume these are contracts that were entered into in September, right? And then they closed in October. Next, we look at pending. And we can see that in August, we had a peak in pendings. We had a relatively flat, it went down in terms of the difference between August and September, and then down again in October. So we would expect, and the one reason I think to explain this in terms of why we didn't see all of these suddenly boost this number up is probably escrows went longer. Could be for a variety of reasons. Could be because financing was taking longer. I'm finding that financing is challenging. And frequently there are delays. So it could have been that we had 45, 50-day escrows that then went over into October to cause this boost from this boost that we saw here in August. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. I think it's a very reasonable expectation or explanation for that. But we do see a decline here in pendings, which in my world would reflect fewer closings, fewer homes sold in November. So we're going to see how that goes. That's our first crystal ball gaze, I guess, is an expectation in lower sold homes numbers for next month. Next, let's take a look at Santa Clara County list versus sales price. The green line is the average list price, and the average sales price is the darker green line. And whenever we're in these places where these two things are at huge odds with one another, for instance, when average list price was way up here and average sales price was way down here, and we were talking about the challenges of recalibrating sellers to the realities of the market, that's what that is. That's trying to talk down the market. But we saw this sort of converge right up into June of 2023, just in time, as I think some folks were feeling the stress. Their home had been on the market for a while. We had some crazy numbers in terms of home price reductions during this time in a variety of markets. And finally, we got to the point where these two numbers kind of started to go hand in hand. You like to see that. That indicates not out of whack expectations on the part of sellers as compared to what the market can actually deliver. And we're seeing those things kind of hovering together now, and they've really been hovering together since June, right? A little bit of a deviation in July, and given that peak folks interpret that as the hot time of the month, seeing a little bit of a drop in the actual sales price is a little interesting there, but very much hand in hand as we've gone through the year. It wouldn't surprise me if this number continues to be like this for the county overall from October to November. Next, if we take a look at Santa Clara County percent of asking price, just to get a feel, right? And this is a frenzy number, right? As soon as we start to see tons of properties going for way over asking price, that's a frenzied market. And we sort of peaked in March of 2022 at 115.3%. So folks were paying, and I remember, man, I sold a home in March of 2022. And that was trying to save my folks money was ridiculous with folks. And we went through several offers where we offered what we thought was a very juicy amount over asking price, only to be beat out in some cases by over $100,000. It was ridiculous. And I honestly had to try to get my clients to change expectations because there were some markets where they just couldn't expect to buy a home without putting up at least 10 to 15% more. Finally got them into something, and we did have to pay over asking, but not much. So it ended up, we beat the numbers in the month that we bought in terms of how much over asking price. And then we saw sort of a steady decline there from August of 2022 all the way through till January of 2023. And then this number started going up. And this is where I got it wrong. I was calling right around July, August that this number would start to decline, and it's been relatively flat. We have finally gotten a bit of decline in October, but not nearly as much as I thought. I would have expected that by October we would have been at or just below 100%. But the way the market's been playing, it is absolutely nuts in terms of folks on average paying over asking price. Where do I see this going? I don't see a huge change between October and November. It wouldn't surprise me if we're still over, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it's less than 104.1. I would guess maybe in the 3% range for next month. We'll see once those numbers are out. And just to calibrate to everybody, these are numbers that were generated by the multiple listing service on November 7th, just so you're aware of when I got these numbers. And at this sample size, any onesies or twosies that are different aren't going to change these statistics enough for it to be significant. Okay, next. Santa Clara County days on market. Relatively flat, really, since April. not huge changes, right? We've been sort of in that just below 20, just above 16 range since April of 2023 all the way to now. Would normally expect these numbers to start to rise a little bit more because as other folks pull their homes off the market, homes that have been on the market longer start to sell, right? As you see, if you see fewer homes get listed and more homes going off the market because folks don't want to be listed during November, December, that reduces the overall inventory. But for those that have to stay on, what you'll tend to see is a sell-off of older properties. Not what we're seeing this time, though. What we're seeing this time is increases in total number of homes listed, right? We already covered that one in terms of it being a deviation from what is considered normal from previous markets. And now we can take a look at price reductions. Is the heading not going to show up here? Oh, wait, look at that. Why is that so huge? Let me see if I can. Has it been like this the whole freaking time? Let's see here. I hope that. Wow. Geez. I apologize if you've had a truncated right side all this time. All right. So here we go. So numbers for the percent of listings with reduced prices for October. Last month in Santa Clara County, it was 21% of the listed homes had a price reduction. This month, it's 25%, so it increased. But it's down 46% from the same time last year. San Jose, last month was only 5%. Homes did not need to get price reductions last month. This month, there were 27%. And I think what that is a phenomenon is, it's a phenomenon of sellers who've been on the market for way too long, reducing their price, thinking, I got to get this done before the end of the year. This has got to happen. So you're seeing an uptick in the number of reductions. It's a 44% reduction from the same time last year in that number. So almost double that number was happening last year. In terms of Morgan Hill, 23% last month, 20% this month. And this is really where Morgan Hill's sort of been hovering, right? The 20 to 25% range. It's down 56% from the same time last year, where then this month we saw 20% home price reductions. Interestingly enough, Gilroy, despite the fact we saw a lot of homes selling for over asking price, 28% were reduced in price last month, 26% were reduced this month, and that's a 56% reduction from the same time last year. And that number surprises me. It doesn't surprise me it went down from last month, but it surprises me that it's not lower than that given the sales numbers that we're seeing. But again, Gilroy has some variety in their marketplace. So not all homes are created equally, right? And it is true of all markets. You tend to see the best examples of a home in each community sell first. If it happens to enter a market, let's say you've got a market where 20 homes are for sale. None of them are great examples of what's in that market, but one comes up that is a great example. That one tends to sell right away. So you end up with one home in a marketplace that sold in 10 days and others that have been on the market for 70 that just haven't sold, right? It's just kind of how these things work. And as you look through photos of these listings, if you're someone who just sort of trolls those things on a daily basis like I do, you'll see that sort of thing, right? So you kind of get a feeling for that happening in various markets. Okay, well, that is it for the big numbers. If you have any concerns or questions about any of those, I'd love to see them. You can make your comments or questions visible to me by just entering them right there below the video, whether you're in YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. I'd be happy to touch on any of this data for you to try to bring a little bit more clarity to any questions that you might have. In terms of being able to figure out where things are going to go, I think we've kind of touched on that as we went through each piece of data. So let's go ahead and jump in and start looking at some of the news items that we've got. Now, the first one I'm going to hit is what I talked about actually leading up to the beginning of the show, and that's the court case that has got everybody freaking out. And I'm going to refer everybody to the podcast for 2 weeks ago from the Real Estate Realities podcast that I do on usually a weekly basis, but I haven't been feeling well for the last couple of weeks. But go ahead and check that out. You can go to therebelbroker.com. The last podcast covers it completely. I honestly think that this is going to get appealed. They've already said they're going to appeal it. And my feeling is that this does not stick. I don't think this is going to be something that ends up being what a lot of headlines seem to indicate that it is. Now, for those of you who've been listening to me for a while, you know that I am no apologist for the National Association of Realtors. I am no apologist for the dumb stuff that happens in the world of real estate. But I honestly don't see a better way to handle commissions than the way that they're handled now. And by that I mean what gets us the best results. And in my mind, when I think about what the commission is and why it's handled between the listing agent and the home person who owns the home, is the person who owns the home is simply saying, I want you to sell my house, and this percentage commission I'm going to pay you covers the cost of doing that, including a compensation to the buyer's agent, right? It wraps it up into one number. And it keeps things clean. If we introduce this as something that's going to be a separate negotiation between a buyer and their agent, I suppose that can happen. I mean, if that's what comes out of this, I'll adapt to that and everything, and I'll work through that. But I think buyers end up getting the short end of the stick in a lot of different ways in terms of you're going to find agents, because of the way it's going to work and because it's going to be a separate line item for buyers, the potential quality of representation for them is going to be lower. Now, of course, for any of you who've talked to me before, you know that I have some pretty strong opinions on the number of agents who are actually good at their job, which is ridiculously low given the number of them that are out there, and that choosing your agent is something you have to be super careful about. I've done shows on questions to ask agents that will annoy the hell out of them, but actually give you some great insights into whether or not they're any good at their actual job. And bear in mind, their actual job is not selling 380 homes in a year. Their actual job is to get you the best price, terms, conditions on the timeline that works best for you. That means typically, if you're a seller, the highest price, if you're a buyer, the lowest price in the shortest amount of time. And quote unquote top producers who sell 300 and something homes a year or 200 homes a year don't tend to score well when you judge them by the numbers that actually matter to buyers and sellers. I've done a whole other podcast on that. That is my favorite soapbox, so don't get me started because we'll go on for a very, very long time if I go down that particular road. All right, but the long and the short of this is, and the key points that they get pointed out here on CNBC, the recent $1.8 billion jury verdict against the National Association of Realtors and several top brokerage firms highlights mounting legal and market pressures on real estate commissions. And also, to be clear, remember, I've been doing this since 1988. This is at least the fourth time that something like this has come up. And every other time, it's been reversed. Just throwing that out there for a little history. A recent Keefe, Bruyette, and Woods analyst report estimated that $100 billion paid in real estate commissions annually could be cut by 30%, with as many as 1.6 million agents losing their source of income. I don't think these guys know how this stuff works. I don't see how they get a 30% reduction in real estate commissions by thinking this is how this is going to work. And there may be a drop. What you might find is buyer-focused agents that are either doing a flat fee or saying, hey, we'll do it for 1.5%, which would be obviously typically a 1% drop from what they normally make. But I don't see that as a potential benefit to buyers. I'm particularly good at what I do, and I do an awful lot of education of my clients as we go, particularly my buyer clients, as we go through the process and help them spot potential worrisome things about a property. And of course, I feel like I'm good at this job. I wouldn't be in it if I thought I was bad at it. So, take that for what it's worth. I like to think I've got the reviews to back up that claim. But in any event, I don't see this as an improvement to the system. I see it as working more against consumers than for them. And finally, commissions are already negotiable. Buyers agents are likely losers, as home buyers are more likely to bypass them or in the least negotiate for lower fees. And I think that's a really good point to make. If buyers end up doing that and end up bypassing them, what does that equal? What does the word bypass equal? Well, it equals most likely them going to the listing agent and asking the listing agent to represent them, which is double-ending a deal, which is totally legal in California. Listing agents will love that, and I have an ethical problem with it. I don't believe that you can be the agent for the buyer and the seller and represent both of them responsibly and well, particularly the buyer, right? I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. That feels like a pretty huge conflict of interest to me. Have I ever double-ended a deal? Yes, I have. There are very specific circumstances where I think it's okay to double-end a transaction. Typically, that is, for instance, I've done a few divorces over the years where the two parties have already agreed on all the numbers. They just need someone to guide them through the process. Okay, well, then in that case, I represent both parties, right? So And there's other circumstances I've seen it, but that's just a good example. All right, next, lumber prices are down. Why do I mention lumber prices? Because lumber is what they build houses out of. So when you start to see prices go down, that usually indicates demand is down, which typically indicates building is down. Orders for lumber is down, which tends to be a situation that indicates that, particularly when it's a national number like this, just lumber prices across the board, that building in general is taking a hit. You may see other headlines that say, hey, builders are building and et cetera, but if they're not consuming lumber, what are they building those houses out of, right? So this is a leading indicator to me that orders for lumber are not where they need to be. And look at that. It's a pretty good drop. Lumber prices per 1,000 board feet. Look at how low that is. That's a pretty substantial drop, right? Which indicates to me we may not be seeing as many homes as we might expect in the coming months. Next, U.S. population projected to begin declining in the second half of the century. This was just one I thought was interesting. Obviously, population affects what home costs are. Interesting to, and who knows? I mean, they're talking about the second half of the century. How old will I be in 2050 and the years after that? I may not even be around, right? But interesting to note that that's a time frame and for those of you who don't know, population isn't one of those things that just always goes up. It actually tends to peak and then go down in various civilizations. So I know that a lot of folks just project, hey, the world will be too crowded within 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. If you look at how those numbers actually work and how reproduction actually ends up happening in big populations, you don't tend to see just a predictable line that goes up forever. So, but I thought I'd point that one out because I thought it was interesting. So we're at 2023 right now. So we're just about 25, 26, 27 years away from the second half. Obviously, any investment you make right now is going to be good for 25 years, but interesting in terms of being a rental. But that indicates a switch over, right? Maybe your kids, maybe you'll want to put in your calendar for 2050 for your kids to start thinking about doing their investments. I thought I'd put this out here as a reminder. Your taxes for 2024 are changing. There's going to be new brackets, so you can just figure out where you're at for a single filer, married individuals, filing joint returns, or for head of households, whatever, and come up with what your new number is. They've adjusted it. The income limits for all tax brackets and all filers filers will be adjusted for inflation and will be as follows according to this table. So I thought I'd share that with everybody so you can get calibrated to that because tax time is creeping up. Next, this was one I thought was interesting. I frequently get folks who want to do, and maybe you're a little bit late for this particular bandwagon, but if you wanted to start doing short-term rentals, this is a great little list. So the 223 best short-term rentals with 2,000 to 3,000 monthly income or 3,000 to 4,000 monthly income, and a lot of how much your income is going to be is going to be affected by how much is your acquisition cost, right? So number one, with 2,000 to 3,000 monthly income is going to be Columbia, Missouri, with a median property price of $277,000. So in this, if you're a brand new person to this, one of the first things is barrier to entry, right? And the barrier to entry here is not horrible. 277 is surmountable in terms of getting a number that you can buy. Irondale, Alabama is number 2 at 263. Evansville, Indiana, 281,000. Adelphi, Maryland, 254,000. So just something to throw in there. One thing I would throw at you, and this is something, and the reason why I'm doing this is because not only does it pertain to me specifically, but it's also something you need to probe. So I went down here to where it's the biggest payoffs, right? Hauula. That's where mine is, with a median property price of $934,000. But here's the problem. Short-term rentals are completely being eliminated by the county. There is a push on to make it impossible to do short-term renting. So one thing I want to leave you with in terms of short-term rental advice is make sure to assess the level of hostility that they're putting out in terms of short-term rentals. Because I'll tell you, the island of Oahu, which is where Hauula is on the windward side of Oahu, just south of the Polynesian Cultural Center. They want you out. They have pitchforks out for short-term rentals. So just be aware of that. There's things going on at the place where my short-term rental is that's going to settle this once and for all. which is either going to make it a wonderful thing or a horrible thing, depending on how it turns out. So we'll see how that goes. But this is a great guide, and it's at mashvisor.com. So feel free to use that if you're looking for some interesting lists to inspire you to search in different areas. And then once you get an area that sounds interesting to you here, head on over to Zillow or Trulia. I tend to use Zillow. There's no longer a favorite one for me anymore. I used to always lean into the site that would also present me with crime data on the same map, but they all stopped doing it. Zillow used to do it. Trulia used to do it. Realtor.com used to do it. Realtor.com was the last one to give up the ghost and stop doing it. Now I have to go to a separate site whenever I find a address I like. I just do a crime heat map search for that address to find out what crime is like in that area. So it bugs me that for whatever reason they don't do that, but they don't do it. And that's the same thing. All right. Literally I did this one for the snippet. This is something that scares me and I think should mentally prepare you for what's coming in 2024. Sorry, that whole sore throat thing is starting to kick in. The U.S. economy is on the brink of a recession, but consumers don't seem to care. Consumer spending is up, credit card debt is through the roof, and the average American's excess savings have been depleted. And this is scary stuff because you could have written this line in 2006 or 2007. Consumer debt was going through the roof. People did not have savings. They were literally living paycheck to paycheck. So many different numbers remind me of the last downturn that it's creepy. So I thought I'd throw that out there as just sort of something to warn you. Inflation improves in October to 3.2%, its lowest since June. Still too high. But remember, the current rise in interest rates that we've been seeing is to reduce this number. You reduce inflation by increasing the prime rate, right? So we'll see where this goes because we have to have inflation under control. But to fight recession, which people think is right around the corner in 2024, you have to reduce prime lending rates, right? So we've got two things where the solution is the opposite thing, and they're happening in conjunction with one another. So we'll see how that plays out. Next, buyers' payments climb as down payments climb as buyers contend with limited inventory and high mortgage rates. Yeah, I guess right? Home prices have gone up, so down payments have gone up. Down payments reached a new peak in the third quarter of 2023 with an average 14.7% down payments and a median down payment amount of $30,000. I don't think that's much of a surprise, but what's interesting is we are still seeing some crazy lending policies of even 1%, 3%, under 5%, and some special programs like 0% down that I think simply perpetuate bad financial planning on the parts of lenders and institutions that push this sort of thing. Next, why self-storage beats rental properties. So I was having a conversation with some of my investor clients on a Zoom call the other day, and we were just talking about convenient vehicles, and we were talking about single-family residentials versus up to a fourplex versus 4+ plexes, different real estate options. And I brought up rental properties for self-storage, and everybody just sort of paused for a minute. These are great ways. In terms of headaches, the great thing about one of these is you can typically run this without having to be on site all the time. You can go in and be in there maybe a little bit per day or only a couple times a day. I have a guy who did one of these in Nevada. Where did he do it? Reno? South of Reno, he did one, and he's making excellent cash flow with his storage units. And he's only in there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think. And he's doing fantastic. So if you're someone who's looking for something to invest in that doesn't necessarily require you to be super involved, self-storage seems to be a great option. Next, I wanted to sort of just take what the Realtor.com site's been pushing out in terms of national numbers, so we could take those local county numbers and sort of compare them. Median listing prices are up. Yeah, that's what we're seeing. New listings are up 6.4. And we're seeing new listings. We saw new listings boost ourselves. Active listings up, and time on market is down. So all the trends are really on par with what the nation is seeing. Ours is obviously exceeding it in that direction, typically by quite a bit. But just so you can kind of see what the national numbers are. Pre-leasing begins for Vita at Morgan Hill apartment complex. I wanted to just share this one because it's very local. It's a brand new apartment complex that's opening up here in Morgan Hill. To give you an idea of where this bad boy is, it's right here. This is Cochrane, and this is Monterey Highway. So those those larger condo or townhomes that are developed are right there, and this is sort of behind it right here. You take Jarvis, and then the entrance is right here to get into them. But this is where they're going to be located. If you know someone who's looking for an apartment to rent in Morgan Hill, those are the new ones that are coming on the market. Next, this is an interesting one because it's sort of a broader what's going on with our local economy kind of thing. WeWork goes bankrupt, home buyers give up, and Zillow stock plunges. Amidst all of the e-buyer stuff and all these other things that Redfin and Zillow and all these other companies were trying to do that have just dismally failed, now WeWork is gone. And that's an interesting development simply because it indicates softness in the small business world, right? Because WeWork was very much specific to relatively small businesses or entrepreneurs that were just getting spaces for them. And those guys have now lost all their money. And what's interesting is there's a huge building in San Francisco where 31% of it was occupied by WeWork. And those guys are going to look at selling it, and they're looking at losing millions because so many of these companies bought these buildings, and now they're just not worth what they were. San Francisco being what San Francisco is, they'll be lucky to get half what they bought it for. So I don't know. Some people would call that karma. I don't know. But it was interesting. I was actually in San Francisco for a wedding when this whole overseas Asia Pacific thing was happening. I have not seen the streets of San Francisco cleaner in any recent memory. I mean, I've gone to San Francisco for one reason or another over the last couple of decades, and this was the best it's looked in forever. So, and it's amazing they did it in like a week, I guess, is sort of how it happened. And it's amazing to me that all this time they've said we can't get control of this. And then as soon as foreign dignitaries from China and other countries are coming, magically it all comes together. But my niece got married. She had her wedding at the Golden Gate Yacht Club, I guess. Beautiful place. So just a fantastic thing. I wish them well. Next, what did we have? This is a brand new restaurant in Morgan Hill that's right down by the depot. The Silos and Curro Vino to open soon in downtown Morgan Hill. I'll absolutely check them out. I try to make a point of any new business. I try to go check them out. How I missed Main Street Bagels for so long is beyond me because I went to them a few weeks back and I'd never been. And they've been around for over 15 years. So this is 2 Los Gatos-based establishments, a wine shop and a restaurant bar. They're going to open in new locations in downtown Morgan Hill. Silo's restaurant, owned by Oak and Rye of Los Gatos, will open at a newly constructed 1,400 square foot restaurant space at 17500 Depot within the Granary District Commercial Center. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that. I'm wondering, did that other restaurant that was there close? That really amazing. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember it. But there was a great restaurant down there. One of my sons used to love going there for his birthday, but I can't remember what the name of the place is. And that's it. That's the whole. That was me looking for stuff. Oh, wait, no. There's more. Rental market's downward slide, 5 straight months of falling rents. So this is obviously a national number. Interesting to note, I have a subscription that I do that lets me see what's happening with rental properties in Morgan Hill, Gilroy, San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, Mountain View. So I just try to keep a handle on what's happening. And I am seeing far more reductions in asking rental prices. Rentals that are staying on the market for a super long time and then resulting in a reduction. It is an interesting trend because that hasn't been the case for a very long time. I think last year, just before summer, I had a couple of areas where a few properties had rent price reductions in advertising. And these are the things I find in Zillow, because that's almost every landlord is going to put their property in Zillow in addition to others as they try to get it rented. But this is a trend I've definitely seen. Usually to the tune of $100 to $300 per month. So it's not minor changes. U.S. home prices rose for the 6th month in a row, according to Case-Shiller. We continue to see that here locally. U.S. housing starts rise unexpectedly, and this is one I wanted to sort of contrast with the lumber numbers we looked at earlier. If you're building more houses, if housing starts go up, you should see lumber prices go up as well because demand increases, and we're just not seeing that. So we'll have to see how that goes. And I have a Google map thing here set. Oh, okay. So this is when I was talking about Morgan Hill and why the original list price was so high. This is it. It's these folks right here at Borello Ranch. As you can see, Borello Ranch is located just off of Coyote Creek. So if you ever go to the Target, that's over here, and then come up here and come around and go towards the Borello Farms, and you get Borello Ranch Park. And that's where these homes are. And I believe we had one home that was we had two homes over here. We had two on the same street, and then we had one more over here somewhere. All of them, I think, in excess of $3 million. So that definitely skews the numbers a little bit. Is that it? Yeah. Wow, we managed to get through all of it, and only 1 minute past the typical cutoff. Now, if anybody's got any questions, now's the time to ask. If not, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, because that kind of is the end of the stream of consciousness that I wanted to share with you this morning. Now, I hope all of you have gotten some good information out of this. The goal is always to leave you with more information on the table than I take up in your time. And hopefully, through one of these dozens of things we've discussed, you've gotten a little kernel of something. And if you need any help with it, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me at soldbyrobert.com. That's where the website is. I've also got some awesome tools there, whether you want to get a free instant value estimate of your home or you want to start your home search. Soldbyrobert.com, right there on the front page above the fold. I make it easy to find. Those tools are right there and ready for you to use. Or if you'd like to start a conversation with something, go there and do Contact Robert, and I'll be happy to respond and help you find solutions that'll work specifically for you. All right. I hope you all had a good cup of coffee with me. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.